Zoro needs a new sword, and I previously talked about Zoro's sword breaking in the Elbaf arc, but how is it going to be done? And then Oda just tosses me the perfect alley-oop like it's Kobe and Shaq. Shanks, the one-armed hockey man, has a big bro, and his devil fruit is the one we thought Blackbeard had for so many years. Yep, that's right. But it's not technically his devil fruit, it's his sword devil fruit, and it has 3 heads, and it has 3 swords. Yes, it's the mythical Ceberus with the awakened sash, and it's spinning its heads when it's launching itself at Loki. This is a very cool power, and the only character I can think of equipped to handle this power with a type of arsenal is Rono or Zoro with his 3-sword style. And I feel like the only way that Zoro can deal with this is if he has a new sword. Yes, a supreme great sword. So when you look at Zoro throughout the years and find the world's greatest swordsman Mihawk, who has a supreme great sword, the Yoru of the Black Blade, and promising Luffy to not lose again, to getting Arlong scared, yes, scaring the fearsome Arlong after seeing Zoro's scars he obtained from Mihawk, and still fighting, of course, defeating Hachi and then fighting Arlong. Arlong was like, what is going on here? Zoro did this to buy time for Luffy, but then in Whiskey Peak, he actually ends up fighting Luffy in a crazy miscommunication where Zoro defeated 100 bounty hunters as well. To be willing to cut off his legs on Little Garden, which a lot of people don't like to talk about, a preview arc to the Elbaf arc, which is all about pride of the warrior, and Zoro showed pride over here, where he would throw away his pride many times in the story for his captain. Now, moments like Zoro taking Luffy's pain, absolutely nothing from Kuma, to Madama Karuch thinking Zoro's the captain for his ferociousness when he was trying to take out Celestial Dragon and Bonnie had to stop him. One of my favorite moments is him throwing his pride aside for Luffy and bowing down to Mihawk for the training to get stronger so they're able to go to the new world. Just look at Hody Jones. Oda has Zoro go into Fishman Island and defeat the final villain underwater, a fishman underwater before Luffy does. Like, Oda's always glazed Zoro. It's a good thing, but yeah, he's always done it. To scarring Kaido, Luffy's endgame opponent of Wano with Ashura. When it comes to the Straw Hat, after Luffy, Zoro has been viewed in the best light, and fans wanted him to defeat Kaido. That's how good of a light Zoro's been viewed, that fans were so delusional that they thought that he was going to actually defeat Kaido. That's pretty big. Of course, him blocking a Yonko combo attack was, I think, very enough for Zoro. Now, I agree with fans. If they want Zoro versus Shamrock, I'll agree with them, because of course there's the whole Mihawk and Shanks lore of their rivalry, so that would be cool. But that means Luffy's endgame Elbaf opponent can't be Shamrock, which I think is a perfect endgame opponent for Luffy because of the whole Shanks twist, which is interesting. So I'm gonna do a deep dive on why Zoro versus Shamrock makes a lot of sense and how it ties into Elbaf and Luffy and everything. So let's talk about it. Now, before I do this deep dive, you have to understand how Oda does Zoro fights in the One Piece story. Now, in the New World, Zoro hasn't had a lot of major fights. The first one I can think of is Dressrosa. Yes, during Dressrosa, he fights Pika. And Oda implemented this major fight to showcase that Zoro has Haki. Yes, Zoro used Haki before previously, but Zoro uses coating of Armin Haki, the black Haki in the story, to go through Pika's full body Armin Haki. Now, of course, Pika was just an incredibly huge, massive chunk that Zoro had to cut through as well, which was cool. But going through his Haki was what Oda really wanted to highlight. That's why we got a mini flashback of Mihawk in this Zoro vs. Pika moment. And then, of course, you got to fast forward all the way to Wano. In the beginning of Wano, Zoro fights Kamazo. Yes, this unique warrior samurai with unique weapons, and we found out this was actually Killer, but his punishers were affected a little bit differently. So he, when he saw Zoro again on the rooftop, said, yo, I was nerfed, you gotta fight me again, which I will talk about in the future. But I think that this fight really showcased Zoro can fight while distracted. He took the hit from Killer and defeated him. So his major fights, Zoro's major fights have shown some cool things. But the most major of major fights he had was against King the Lunarian. The same Lunarian we just saw in the mural that goes all the way back to the Void Century against Imu with Joy Boy and all that. Yes, Zoro fought a Lunarian without previous knowledge, and with his intellect was able to pretty much defeat King with his intellect. Honestly, I think Zoro had Kankasaki coding and was already incredibly powerful. This guy was coming off of Scar and Kaido, so when he fights King, he had to use a lot of brain power more so than power itself, because Zoro's power was equipped to defeat King. It was just more so when to actually damage him, because Kankasaki coding attacks were not doing nothing to the Lunarian. But once he figured it out, King of Hell mode, yeah, King was done. But King had a unique weapon. This is the reason why Oda had Zoro fighting King, his unique weapon. It wasn't a conventional sword. Oda has been showing in the New World through these fights with Pika, through his fights with Kamazo and his fight with King, that all his characters, yeah, they use sharp objects or swords or whatnot, but they have different ways of fighting. Pika with his Del Fruit, Kamazo, of course, we all know how he fights differently, and of course, there's also King. So you have to understand, it's interesting how Oda's been showing this. Even just recently, Oda had Zoro fighting an ancient awakened Zoan in Rob Lucci. And I think Oda only had Zoro defeat Rob Lucci to show that Zoro is so strong that he can now take out Luffy's endgame opponents from pre-time skip. Rob Lucci was double the strength of Zoro during Enies lobby. So for Zoro to do him that dirty by scarring him that badly and awaken Zoan at that, yes, of course, Rob Lucci wasn't defeated, but Zoro was going to end up defeating him. It would have been a mid-diff fight, but still. Oda's trying to show us that, yeah, Zoro's in a whole nother league after Wano, as of course, being the future wing of the future Pirate King. He has to be in a different league. Zoro and Sanji told themselves that. That's why Sanji was the reason why Zoro finished off Rob Lucci, the shit talking that Sanji was doing. So yeah, those were the major opponents of the new world of Zoro. But even you can go all the way back to the beginning of the Grand Line when it comes to Zoro and his opponents. From Mr. 1, how did Mr. 1 fight? He uses a Devil Fruit ability where Zoro had to learn how to cut steel. Now, I felt like this was showing that Oda wants Zoro to always fight a character that uses some sort of sharp object in the story, but not conventional swordsmen. So when he does fight Miyuk, he's gone through so many battles, it makes him razor sharp, no pun intended, for the world's greatest swordsman. Now, from unleashing Haki before he even knew what Haki was against Mr. 1, to going to Sky P and fighting one of Viper's strongest soldiers, yes, the Shandian Braham, who uses guns and cool, unique dials, and was very fast, and flash bombs, and just a crazy weaponry-based fighting style, of course, a sky battle, that's what they called it. Zoro does a flying slash, a 36-pound cannon, and showing that Zoro was really highlighting his power as it was progressing the story. And then when you go to Enel's strongest warrior in Ohm had Montara, and he had a dog named Holly, and he had the Ironclad dial. Like, Ohm was just incredibly powerful. Of all the priests, he was the strongest, and Zoro had to triple his pound cannon with a 108-pound cannon that went through a wall, so Montara wasn't effective, it didn't matter, and defeated the Ironclad dial. Man, he uses a dog in Ohm. I gotta give respect to Ohm because he was powerful, but Zoro just said, I just gotta get a little stronger, showing that he would, whatever obstacle he would go through, he's gonna win. But probably his strongest opponent he fights pre-time skip during the Grand Line was Kaku. He did fight Kaku recently in Naked Island, the Awakened Zoan, but Oda just did that for a little bit because Zoro was having a pretty easy job with it. But pre-time skip, oh, that opponent was so hard for Zoro. 4-style user, Rokushiki, CP9, Giraffe Devil Fruit that he recently got. Zoro had to pull out Ashura, 9 swords to take out this Zoan, and it really showed how Zoro was really, every arc in the Grand Line was stepping it up when it comes to his major opponents. Now, I debated if I was going to talk about this in the video, but I have to. Zoro, when he broke his sword by Mihawk, that was interesting. But when he was in Enies lobby, Shu, this marine, used the Rust Devil Fruit to rust his sword and break it. That to me was interesting because it showed that Oda's pretty much going to let you know that Zoro's going to break his swords by some unique factor in the future. And I don't think it's going to be Haki breaking his sword. Someone's Haki just stronger than Zoro. But I do think Haki will have an effect to it. And with Shamrock's Haki plus his Ceberus, yeah, the Ruskin could do it. It's a great swordsman shame for a sword to break. Honestly, I think Zoro's sword breaking, yeah, it's a shame, but I think Zoro needs a new sword. And it's the perfect time. Now, fast forward to Thriller Bark. Zoro wasn't even fighting a human on Thriller Bark. He was fighting pretty much the strongest swordsman of all time, even stronger than Mihawk, Ryuma, but a zombie version of it with Brook Shadow. And Zoro even said, I wanted to fight you when you're alive. Ryuma had a black blade called Shisui that Zoro took. So there's only 2 black blades in the story of all time, Ryuma and Mihawk. So you see where I'm going with this. This was the only time Zoro actually fights a conventional swordsman. He's a dead man. Right after this, we see Zoro having his little clashes with Kuma, where he's worn out. This pacifist Papa Fruit man that's just obviously, you see how strong Kuma is recently in the Naked Island arc. Zoro, the fact that he even damaged Kuma was all respect to the world, to his swordsmanship, honestly. During Fishman Island, Zoro had a pretty relatively easy time fighting the 8-style sword user related to Hachi, pretty much a stronger version of Hachi with poison on his swords. Like I said, when Zoro does fight swordsmen, they always have something uniquely unconventional about them. Then Punk Hazard Zoro fought Monet, who used pretty much her creature body, lower body, with her Logias no Snow Delphi to fight Zoro. And Zoro, without even using Haki, defeated Logia. That shows how intimidating Zoro is as a character. Now, you could say when it comes to the post-time skip, one of his most conventional fights is when he clashed with Furutora, a supreme grade user of the Yakuza Kazen sword. But at the end of the day, Fujitora still has an OP gravity Delphoot as well. This Admiral is not just a conventional swordsman. He has hacks to him as well. And that's the thing I really want to explain in the One Piece story. Like, either the greatest swordsmen are dead, or they have some sort of other power that's aiding them. Like, look at Rayleigh. Rayleigh, he's not dead, but he's out of his prime, so it doesn't count. Yes, the Dark King is out of his prime. He has Conqueror's Haki coding and everything, but he's out of his prime. Then there's Kinemon. Kinemon or Zoro pretty much, first of all, Kinemon has a Delphoot, but doesn't really use in combat. But Zoro took his cutting fire technique and used it on the rooftop. Then there's Shiryu. Shiryu got an invisible Delphoot, so it's like, yeah, he's a cool swordsman, but he has an invisible Delphoot too as well. It's probably going to be Zoro's most conventional sword fight, because invisible is like the least, the least like aiding to his swordsmanship, but still, he still has hacks. There's Ashura Doji, very strong character, dead. There's also Shanks, he has one arm. Yes, he's stronger than Zoro, but he has one arm. Miyagi doesn't want to fight him for a reason. It's like, come on, one-armed swordsman, he's using one sword, Zoro's using three. Shanks would beat Zoro, but I'm saying that as when it comes to swordsmanship, he's definitely not at his best. Then, of course, there's Kozuki Oden. He's dead. Zoro took his Enma sword. Then there's Law. Law has the OP no Mi, one of the most hacks. He cut a mountain Punk Hazard, and we saw in Wano what he can do. He's just awakened that. It's just amazing. We saw the Blackbeard fight. Then there's Cavendish. Cavendish sleeps and turns into Hakuba. He's part of the Grand Fleet, so he's part of Zoro's crew. And then we have the Red Scabbards. They all pretty much try to take on Kaido, but Zoro's the one who scarred Kaido at the end of the day. So you see, when it comes to a lot of these strong swordsmen, they're dead, out of their prime. There's always a catch to it. I want a character where there's no catch to it. Even if I bring a Vista, he's the only pure conventional swordsman that's like on an elite level that we've seen. And even he has a catch to it because he's retired. Yes, the Whitebeard Pirate is retired. He did pretty cool in Marineford against Mihawk, but he's retired. So, like, what's the whole point? Now, I want Zoro to be the world's greatest swordsman, but it looks like the way he's going to do it is a more unconventional route. And Zoro himself is an unconventional swordsman. He uses 3 swords for goodness sake. He has a sword in his mouth. But it's interesting because there isn't that much true raw swordsmanship other than Mihawk, who, let's be honest here. So he's going to be fighting monsters who could use a sword. So Shamrock is like the peak version of a monster who you could use a sword, because his sword has a Delphoot. That's the peak version of a strong swordsman and a strong Delphoot combined, if you think about it, even more so than Fujitora. So it's the perfect monster for Zoro to fight, and by taking out the 3 heads, taking out the 3 swords that are spinning, he will then be conquering Shanks' twin older brother. And it connects to Shanks, of course, and Mihawk, of course, because they have a great rivalry. Plus, I think, honestly, I'd rather see Zoro fight Shamrock than Luffy. I'd rather see Luffy fight Shanks for some reason to show how strong he is. Like, Shamrock is going to be emotional, but I'm not really buying that right now. I'm not fully bought in. But yes, now you see the reason why I believe Zoro will get a new sword and fight, of course, and defeat Shamrock. And it's going to be cool, guys. It's going to be super cool seeing this. That's the reason why Zoro's with Luffy right now. They're hyping it up. They're building it up. And I can't wait to see it. So let me hit you guys with a bonus take. Yes, this is a bonus take I want to talk about. If Zoro does fight Figurland Shamrock, the most hyped up character in the arc so far, and if that's his fight, like, of all fights, not Loki, none of that. He fights Figurland Shamrock and that Ceberus Sword Delphoot, which is going to be hyped because Figurland Shamrock looks like Shanks. Does it take away from Wano? That's my debate in the comment section, because Wano, we saw Zoro, it was hyped up. Zoro said he's going to gather the samurai when he gets to Wano. Akaino tells Kizaru don't go yet, not because of Big Mom or Kaido, but because we don't know the samurai force. We meet the Red Scabbards. They are incredibly powerful, especially Ashura Doji and Denjiro, and Urashi and Akamushi as well. But Ashura Doji and Denjiro were incredibly powerful. You saw Ashura Doji versus Jack. Like, we saw some cool moves with Denjiro. They're strong, but was it not gonna say letdown, but a missed opportunity for Zoro to fight a samurai of like Kozuki Oden level that's like not dead? Because Kozuki Oden was a great samurai to introduce in the story, but he's a past character. He's a dead character. He's Momonosuke's father. Would it have been cool if you introduced Kozuki Oden like character that's alive to challenge Zoro, and that be Zoro's opponent, and not just King, in a sense where like King is not really a swordsman. Like, he's a swordsman, not truly a swordsman, if you know what I mean. So Was it like, what are you guys' thoughts on that? I want to give you guys a debate in the comment section. Me personally, I loved Wano regardless, but I want to see you guys' take as well, because I did expect Zoro to fight like the Shogun with like a crazy sword spin skill and everything. Because if you think about it, Samurai never really had a crazy swordsman unless you're talking about Kozuki Yoden and Ryuma, and they're both dead characters. So was it a letdown? I want to see what you guys thought about that, and maybe that's why I'm leaning towards Figure Shamrock so much in this video, guys. So debate in the comment section.